California in the 1850s was volatile and lawless, a perfect place to reinvent yourself. Law and order were fledgling and often corrupt. A disillusioned miner watching poorly guarded gold wagons, temptation, immense wealth, abject poverty. In that crucible, Richard Barter the prospector died, and Rattlesnake Dick the outlaw was born, ready to stake his claim not with a pickaxe but with a pistol. The precise catalyst for Richard Barter's descent into a life of crime remains a subject of historical debate. But the narrative often begins with a sense of injustice. The story goes that Barter and his partners had their mining claim unjustly seized by a larger, more powerful mining corporation. In a world where legal recourse was often slow, expensive or non-existent for the common man, such an event could easily push someone to seek their own form of justice. Was this the turning point? Was his initial foray into crime an act of revenge? It is a question that probes the very nature of criminality. Are outlaws born, or are they made by the circumstances that surround them? His first documented crimes were not grand heists, but smaller, more opportunistic acts of theft. He began by rustling horses. These early transgressions served as an apprenticeship, teaching him the lay of the land, the timing of patrols, and the art of evasion. He formed a small gang, a band of similarly disaffected men who saw the burgeoning society not as something to build, but as something to prey upon. One cannot help but question the psychology of such a group. Was it a brotherhood forged in desperation, or merely a convenient alliance of self-interest? As his confidence and notoriety grew, so too did the scale of his ambitions. Barter and his gang graduated from petty theft to stagecoach robbery, the quintessential crime of the Old West. They targeted the treasure boxes carried by companies like Wells Fargo, which were filled with gold dust, nuggets and payrolls. They became a persistent menace along the dusty trails connecting Sacramento, Auburn, and the northern mining camps. Imagine the terror of a passenger traveling for days on a rough road, only to be confronted by masked men with Colts and shotguns. For them, Rattlesnake Dick was not a romantic figure, but a harbinger of violence and loss. It was during this period that Barter honed his skills as a leader and a strategist. His robberies were often meticulously planned. He used his intimate knowledge of the Sierra Nevada foothills to his advantage, setting ambushes in remote canyons and planning escape routes through treacherous terrain. He was not just a thug, he was a tactician. He cultivated a network of informants and sympathizers in the small towns and ranches who would provide him with shelter and information for a share of the spoils. What does it say about a community when a notorious outlaw can operate with such impunity? The defining moment of Rattlesnake Dick's criminal career, the act that would cement his legendary status, was the audacious robbery of a mule train on the Trinity River Trail in 1856. This was not just another stagecoach holdup, it was a heist of unprecedented scale. The target was a pack train carrying an estimated $80,000 in gold bullion, a staggering fortune at the time, equivalent to millions of dollars today. This was the kind of score that could set a man up for life, allowing him to disappear and live in luxury. The planning was intricate, involving a collaboration with another outlaw, the notorious Tom Bell. It was a high-stakes gamble that would have dire consequences for all involved. The plan was simple in its audacity. Barter's gang, along with Bell's, would ambush the mule train at a predetermined spot on the remote trail. However, as is so often the case in such ventures, things went awry. The robbery itself was a success, but it descended into a chaotic and bloody shootout. In the ensuing violence, one of the mule train's guards was killed, elevating the crime from grand larceny to murder. This single act dramatically raised the stakes, transforming the outlaws from wanted thieves into hunted killers. How does the mind of an outlaw process such a moment when a robbery for profit becomes a fight for life itself? Following the heist, the gang scattered, planning to meet later to divide the immense loot, but the partnership between Rattlesnake Dick and Tom Bell quickly fractured. Bell was eventually tracked down and killed by a posse, but the gold was not found with him. The lion's share of the bullion, it was believed, had been secured by Rattlesnake Dick. He had the prize, but he was now the most wanted man in California. Barter found himself in a perilous situation. He was in possession of a fortune he could not spend and pursued by enemies he could not easily evade. It is this part of the story that gave birth to the enduring legend of his lost treasure. According to the law, realizing he could not carry the heavy gold and flee, Dick buried the bullion somewhere in the rugged landscape between the Trinity Mountains and the Sacramento Valley. Was this a calculated move, a plan to retrieve his fortune once the heat died down? Or was it an act of desperation by a man who knew his time was running out? Leading the hunt was a formidable figure, Placer County Sheriff J.B. Van Hagen, a man as determined and cunning as the outlaw he pursued. This began a legendary game of cat and mouse, a personal duel played out across the vast and unforgiving terrain of Northern California. Van Hagen was not a man to be trifled with, and he made it his personal mission to bring Barter to justice, dead or alive. The newspapers followed the chase with breathless excitement, turning both the outlaw and the sheriff into household names. For months, Rattlesnake Dick managed to stay one step ahead of the law. His knowledge of the wilderness was his greatest asset. He moved like a phantom through dense forests, hidden ravines, and the labyrinthine network of old mining tunnels. He relied on his network of sympathizers for fresh horses, food, and crucial information about the movements of the posses. It is fascinating to consider the loyalty he commanded. Were these people aiding him out of fear, friendship, or shared disdain for authorities? What does it take for an ordinary citizen to risk everything by sheltering a known killer? Despite his skills, the net was tightening. The pressure was immense, the close calls numerous. On one occasion, a posse led by Sheriff Van Hagen cornered Barter and his accomplice, a man named George Skinner, near a ranch. A fierce gunfight erupted, and in the chaos, Dick was wounded. Yet, even with a bullet in him, he managed to slip through the cordon and escape into the night. These near misses only served to enhance his legend, painting him as an almost invincible figure, a ghost of the gold country. In late 1856, after months on the run, he was finally tracked down and arrested, not in a blaze of glory, but quietly. With his capture, Richard Barter was sent to Folsom Prison, a place from which escape was said to be impossible. He was convicted not for the Trinity River murders, but for his earlier crimes of robbery and mule theft. But Rattlesnake Dick was not just another outlaw. Behind the prison walls, his mind was already at work, plotting a grand escape. Barter discovered the prison blacksmith could forge crude replicas of cell keys. He and a small group of fellow inmates, including his old partner George Skinner, acquired the forged keys. They fashioned shivs and other makeshift weapons while keeping up the facade of compliant prisoners. One must marvel at the sheer audacity and discipline required. How does one maintain such a secret in the suffocatingly close and watchful environment of a maximum security prison? On the night of the escape, they used the forged keys to unlock their cells. They silently overpowered a guard, seized his weapons, and took his keys before melting into the darkness. They made their way to the prison walls, and under a foggy night, they scaled them and vanished. The Folsom prison break was a sensation. It scandalized authorities and thrilled the public. Rattlesnake Dick emerged as more than a highwayman, a folk hero who had bested a formidable institution. Once free, he was also marked. He resumed stagecoach robbery with renewed impunity, terrorizing the roads with his gang. What drives a man to return to the life that led to his imprisonment? Is it a lack of options or an addiction to thrill, risk and notoriety? The freedom Rattlesnake Dick won in his daring escape from Folsom was destined to be short-lived. His renewed crime spree triggered an even more intense manhunt, posses fanning out across Placer County and Nevada County. The law was embarrassed and angry, and they would not be made fools of a second time. The final chapter of Barter's life began on a summer night in 1859. A posse led by Deputy Sheriff George Martin and Under Sheriff John C. Boggs received a tip that Rattlesnake Dick and his gang were hiding near Auburn. This time, there would be no clean getaway. The end was drawing near. The lawmen set up a roadblock on a bridge, lying in wait. As Barter and his gang approached on horseback, the deputies sprang their trap. What happened next was a blur of gunfire and confusion. True to his nature, Rattlesnake Dick did not surrender. In the chaotic exchange, Deputy Boggs was wounded, but Rattlesnake Dick was struck by a fatal shot. He fell from his horse, his reign of terror over in an instant. When the smoke cleared, the lawmen approached the body. It was a grim end, but the story did not end there. Another posse member, Johnson, was accidentally killed by a fellow lawman in the darkness. Rattlesnake Dick's accomplice, George Skinner, took his own life rather than face capture. It was a bloody, tragic conclusion that left more questions than answers. With Rattlesnake Dick dead, the pressing question resurfaced: what happened to the gold? The $80,000 in bullion from the Trinity River heist was never recovered. It wasn't on him when he died. It wasn't found in any of his known hideouts. The secret of its location seemed to have died with him. Did he tell anyone where it was? Did Skinner know? Or was the location a secret he guarded so closely it was lost forever? The death was not an end, but the beginning of a new legend, the hunt for Rattlesnake Dick's lost treasure. More than 160 years after his death, the name Rattlesnake Dick continues to echo through the canyons and gold country of California. His legacy is a complex tapestry of fact and folklore. To the lawmen who hunted him and the victims he terrorized, he was a ruthless criminal, a killer who deserved his violent end. Yet, to others, he has become a romanticized figure, a symbol of rebellion against a system that seemed rigged in favor of the powerful. He represents the dark side of the American dream, a man who sought his fortune not with a shovel and pan, but with a six-shooter and a fast horse. Thank you for joining us on Notorious Figures in History. If you found this story intriguing, be sure to subscribe for more journeys into the lives of history's most compelling characters. And while you wait for our next installment, feel free to explore our other full-length stories on the channel. Your engagement helps us grow organically and continue bringing you these fascinating tales from history's shadows. Until next time, keep wondering about the secrets that history has yet to reveal.